Okay, it's 7:01. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Tewksbury Finance Committee meeting for January 24th, 2022. To begin our budget reviews, Richard, did you say we're starting with community development?
Yeah, so why don't we start with planning, and then we'll move on to building, and then we'll move on to health to start.
All right, is the planning under the community development budget?
Yes.
Okay. Let me share. This will probably mess up my screen here. Let's see. Screen 2, I hope. Am I sharing an Excel spreadsheet?
Yep. There you go.
All right. Excellent.
So Steve, why don't you start off the budgets?
Yep. So starting on this front page here, you can see that regular salaries have gone down from the FY22 budget, and that's because community development, the planning and conservation office have had a number of staff changes. Stefania Gallo left us after probably 5 years, I think. And so that position was filled by Joe Fontaine. Stefania later did come back to work for the DPW as a GIS coordinator, which was a big win for the town. And then Anna McGinty, who was the town planner, left us last month. She left us last month, and Alex Louder has now stepped into the role as community economic development planner. And starting on Monday, we have a new administrative assistant starting. So salaries have been able to come down a bit. Obviously, those changes kind of created the savings here. And then you could see temporary part-time went up just a little bit. And that is where we cover recording secretaries for the different committees and boards that community development supports. Other than that, the only other change I think was down in the expenses, where we just made some minor adjustments for advertising, I think, or no, it was in office supplies and communications. So it was I think $200 where a change was made between those, $200 or $300. But at the bottom line is that the budget coming in for FY23 will be less than what FY22 was.
Okay. I guess I'll go around and see if anybody has any questions on this particular budget. Mr. Cook?
I have no questions.
Okay, Mr. Azamorian?
Just one question. Those departures, were they retirements or just turnover?
Turnover. One of the staff members had just come back from maternity leave and was back for a couple of months and decided that she wanted to vacate the position and probably seek part-time sometime in the future. And then the other one left us for Situate and spent probably two months down there before we were able to recruit her back in a different position. So and she's doing a great job where she is.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Mr. Russo?
No, I appreciate the efforts here. No questions on my end.
Okay, Mr. Lavasier?
Nothing here.
All right, Mr. Christian?
No, sir, no questions.
All right, I do not have any either. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, which one were we moving on to next?
Why don't we go on to building?
Building, okay. That right over here. Yeah, here it is.
Mr. Chairman, you have a new face because we have a new building commissioner. So I think Mark Bertonassi is on this call and we'll go over the budget.
I am. Thanks for meeting with me and giving me the opportunity to come before you and finally meet you guys and ladies. It's been great support in the town so far, and I've got the budget prepared for you. A little bit of an increase over last year, and that's salaries and expenses for some of the meetings have gone up and things like that for our state certifications have all increased in costs, which is some of the reflection of the budget increase.
Okay. Anything else on that, or are we good to ask questions at this point?
If I
That,
could just,
yeah.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, is supervising the building department. I can tell you that Mark has been with us for just about 6 months now, and we're very fortunate to have him. There's been some changes in the building department, but I think under Mark's leadership, we have kind of stabilized things a bit. We have a local inspector full-time that's doing an outstanding job. And we just brought on a new permit technician who started this week full-time to replace someone who had been there for quite a while. But the department is doing a really good job, and glad to have Mark here working for us.
That's great.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, welcome aboard, Mark.
Thank you.
All right. So I guess I'll just go around. My video switched here. Mr. Asavorian?
Yeah, just one question, Mark. Welcome aboard. Great to meet you virtually. Hope we can face to face, maybe at town meeting. I actually don't see any increase in this budget. I see a reduction in regular salaries, which is kind of offset by code books. So I do have the right budget, right?
Yes, actually, that got adjusted with the new clerk. I didn't pick up on that. The salaries in the clerk department went down because of the start of a new employee.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lassier?
Yes, welcome aboard, Mark. I'll second that. Just, let's see, so just to confirm that the salaries went down because we hired a permit technician who makes less than the permit technician that was there before?
Correct.
Okay. And is some of that sick leave buyback due to that prior permit technician leaving?
That is what that is from.
Okay. And yeah, I can attest to the dues and membership going up. My son's a civil engineer, and it seems like it's a state money grab to keep your memberships.
Everywhere
That's
they
all I
can.
have.
Okay, is that it? You good, Rich? All right. Mr. Russo?
Welcome, Mark. I would echo that from my colleagues, but then and actually you've answered my questions. I had similar questions to what my colleagues have already asked, so appreciate the insights and the responses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Christian?
Welcome, Mark. No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Cook?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one, two. How many code books, Mark? Welcome anyway to the town. How many code books in that $3,000?
There's going to be 2 sets of 6 plus electronic ones that we can use out in the field.
2 sets. How many in a
Six.
set?
There's 6 books that required for complete code. You have commercial, residential, energy, fire, mechanical, property maintenance, and swimming pool. Those are all separate editions of the International Code Council.
Correct. And what editions are they?
They're anticipating they're going to go to the 2021 edition.
2021?
We're currently on the 2015. They've been skipping a session. They come out every 3 years internationally. The previous years, they've skipped a cycle to reduce costs and changes. to go to a 6-year cycle.
Are you expecting any amendments of the Mass General Law?
Oh, yeah, there'll be several hundred pages of amendments that'll have to be inputted into these new books. They don't come added into it. It's a separate document.
Are those amendments in use today?
Some of them are. The current cycle is the 2015 amendments, but there'll be the 2021s.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Just curious as to what $3,000 is buying us. Thank you.
Biggest portion of that is probably the electronic searchable software that we can use.
We need a license for that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, is that license included in the cost?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that good? Are you good, Mr. Cook?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Rich, I see your hand up.
Yes, on the electronic versions, are they automatically updated? Like, do we get updates as they come out? Since
What?
as newer new things go into effect?
The state doesn't update until they do a full code cycle, unless it's an emergency amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I think I hit everybody. Sorry to keep track. I don't have any other questions. Again, welcome aboard, and thanks for presenting your budget.
Thank you.
All right. Which one should we move on to now?
Health.
Health. Let's find that one. There we are. Okay.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I'm the director. So over the past year, my previous predecessor has left. She retired, and I took over probably last January. And we also lost our public health nurse in May. So we had some turnover in our department as well. We hired a new health inspector within the past year. She started last February. So there's been a little increase in the salary line item. And then, are there any other questions?
Well, I can go around. Mr. Razavorian, any questions? Health? Find the right button.
Sorry, had trouble getting to the mute button.
There we go.
A couple of questions. I noticed in the cover letter narrative that was proposed, there were several requests of possible items that I was trying to track how many of those may have made it into the budget, like an increase in staff development. It does look like there is some additional staff development money, a little more professional services money. I was just curious if we could just understand those.
So for professional services, I believe that's, we won't have enough money to get flu vaccine this year. That is because we were without a public health nurse, and usually we get reimbursed through the state. So I believe that's where that's coming from. Increase in staff development. So we have multiple certifications that we have to keep up with, the inspector and I. And each year there's a conference, and we're usually pretty short on that budget line item.
But does anything in the professional services or the staff development correlate to one of the requested increases in the health cover letter, the health narrative?
Yes, the increased staff development was, I believe anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave, I think I think they were addressed in the, as you can see, both of those lines did have an increase.
Right.
So I think
I
the
just
only
wasn't sure
area,
if I could correlate it back to the cover letter, which is great. Whenever we can find some money to take care of some things like this, I'm very pleased. I just couldn't directly track it back. So thank you for those answers.
Okay, Mr. Christian, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Mr. Russo.
Actually, just one question. Thanks, Shannon, for the information. Excuse me. Do you any expectations as it relates to any of the line items budgeted with the pandemic or associated with the pandemic? I mean, in terms of, do you think that there could be any relief that we could potentially see in any of these line items if things start to go in a more positive direction?
So currently we're a part of a grant, the health department, with three other communities. And that's due to COVID. So we were able to increase and get a part-time inspector through this grant and fund part of the nurse salary as well. So really that's just money straight from the state that is housed under Tingsboro. So that's really the only kind of COVID fund relief that I am aware of at the time.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lavassia?
Thank you, Shannon. You've had a busy year. Only question I have is, can we share an animal control officer with the worker? Is that right?
correct.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cook.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Shannon, my understanding is when we lost our health director, you moved up, you were promoted.
Yes,
Have you received your certification as a public health director
I have. I got it in December.
this past December?
Yep.
Thank you. One other question unrelated to your budget request. Under the Americans Care Act, have you received any of the funds from that act at all to help with your department through this pandemic?
Richard, does that go to you?
So throughout the pandemic, the public health departments throughout the state received some funding through state DPH. Then the COVID money that we were allocated from the federal government, as well as the FEMA money from the federal government, each of the departments have been able to receive reimbursement for any COVID expenses. The most recent money that came in from the federal government that was allocated by the Commonwealth was the opera money. That totaled a little over $9.3 million. All of that funding has been allocated towards water distribution projects. So none of that went to any of the departments. It went to strictly water distribution. But as Shannon mentioned before, there's still money that is coming through by way of grants or money allocated for public health departments for additional inspectors, where we were able to get money to share a full-time health nurse. So throughout the entire pandemic, Tom, money has come through via different state and federal agencies.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Just to follow up, just from my readings, the American Cares Act audit was finalized on October 29th. So is all our paperwork in?
All of our paperwork is in for CARES Act. We still have time to submit reimbursements for FEMA, which we have one more going in the next month or so. But all of our expenses have been put in through either CARES or FEMA.
Okay, well, I understand the CARES Act is closed out as of October 29th.
Correct. Correct. So we still have one more for FEMA itself. There were two separate ones.
Okay. You mentioned the other departments. Do you have a listing of what we've been reimbursed under the American CARES Act? For
I can
all-
get that. Yep. Yeah, we do have that.
Could you share that with the committee?
Sure. I'll send it out this week.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, Tom. I don't have any additional questions, so thank you, Shannon.
Rob, I'll follow back up with a listing of how to track back the unfunded priorities that the Board of Health listed compared to what's in the budget. Some of them made it into the budget, some did not. And I'll send a tracking to the committee.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Okay. Which one were we moving on to next?
Why don't we go to human resource?
Human resource. I got it. Okay.
Good evening. So my budget doesn't change a whole lot from last year, a little bit in salary increases just from step increase and longevity. And the only other things we changed were slight increase to office supplies and also advertising. We hadn't increased the office supplies since I started 10 years ago, so that seems fair. And then advertising, as all the people who came before me, it's been a busy year for recruiting efforts, so that helps to offset the cost that we pay for advertising on MMA and those kind of places.
All right, thank you. Mr. Azamorian, any questions?
I was just trying to track the increase in professional services. Could you just talk to that a little bit?
My apologies. Okay, so the increase for that is going to be for the background searches. We use a new company called Creative Services to take care of background searches for police, fire, and the dispatch, the Regional Communication Center. Previously, we were doing those in-house, which was taking quite a bit of the police department's man hours to take care of those. We find that this is a huge savings for us, time and dollar-wise.
Great, thank you. Makes complete sense.
Are you good, Dave?
That's all for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Christian.
No, I'm good, Mr. Chairman. No questions.
Mr. Lavasier.
Along that same vein on professional services, I think it's great that we're using an outside firm rather than using internal resources. Do we know what the ballpark of what delta we're saving in that arena? Is it $10,000?
So it costs us about $375 per applicant that we do a background search on. And I would say that a detective's salary is much more than that. And that usually takes 20 plus hours per person if we're doing it in-house. So I would think it's a pretty good savings.
Yes, that is. Thank you. I just wanted to get my head around it. It is a big savings. Thank you.
Can't remember if I already asked you, Jason. Jason, you have any questions?
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good, okay. Mr. Russo.
Yeah, just one question, actually. Sorry to pick apart the professional services piece, but just as a follow-up to my colleagues' questions. So have you given any thought as to, ensuring that the amount that's listed here in the budget, because I go back a couple of years, obviously the budget was a little higher, et cetera, for those services, and just sort of compared it to terms of what we think we're going to potentially be adding to other departments in town or other, in terms of resources, and where that this number is a fair and reasonable number at this point based on, the requests that are out there?
So if we look back to 2019, the dollars for professional services were actually for an FSA plan that we used, and we paid the fees out of that. So we just started using CSI the tail end of 2020, I would say. So it's fairly new, and obviously it's driven based on what we anticipate for new hires in police, fire, and dispatch. We're not using their services for the traditional employees. We're using still Corey checks and reference checks and that kind of thing. So that is going to change depending just on the uptick in police and fire.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because I was looking at some of the details, and I think you referenced $365 charge per background check. So I sort of 10 folks, 10 resources that would be hired, and just wanted to make sure that that sort of compared against what we thought we were going to be hiring for those departments. Matched up.
Right.
That's all. Yep.
Well, in FY21, we had a big jump because we opened up the Regional Communication Center. So there were quite a few folks that we did background checks for. There was
Yeah.
also a bumper crop for police and fire as well, just through normal retirements, increases in salary.
Makes sense.
Rich, we try to project out who we know is retiring next year, and then maybe a couple of extras just in case. But we can never tell if someone's going to just decide to leave or retire on the spot.
Obviously. Okay. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Cook, any questions?
Not right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lassier, I see your hand up again.
Yes, I just wanted to follow that thread a little further. Would it be to our advantage to utilize this resource for routine Corey checks like we?
So we have access to a Corey check that's free for us, so we wouldn't want to pay.
Oh, that's even better.
CSI.
Good answer.
Yeah, so I can do all of the other departments. I have access to the system to do background checks for all of the other folks. So it does save us some money by me doing the internal or the non-public safety individuals.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll also use this service for department head level checks because they go more in depth.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any additional questions. I think I hit everybody, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Town clerk and her budgets.
sounds good. Let me pull that up. Can I find it? Sorry, give me a second.
In a separate folder than the general one, Rob.
Yeah, maybe I need to.
It has its own folder.
Yeah, sorry. All right, does that look like it, town clerk? Welcome, Denise.
Welcome. Thank you. So my budget, as far as salaries, the only increase in salaries is due to contractual increases, step increases, cost of living, and longevity. So the majority of my staff has been working with me for over 10 years. So 3 of my staff members get longevity, and there's only 1 that doesn't. As far as the operating budget, everything is level funded from previous years with the exception of professional services, and that is due to increase in costs for our annual town census, as well as voter confirmation mailings. So due to more households and more residents, more voters, those increase in costs, as well as we do print a resident list every year, and We purchase hard copies for sale as well as we distribute electronic copies. And we have noticed, strangely, an increase in demand for the physical copies. So there's a little bit of an increase in that as well. So we sell them for $15, which just covers the cost for printing for each resident list book. And then the rest, let's see, office supplies, level funded. Everything else, I think, is level funded. Dues and memberships had a $15 drop. I think that was just, we were expecting an increase in, I think, the Middlesex Town Clerks Association, which didn't increase. So that's about it.
All right. Mr. Asnavorian.
No specific questions, but I do want to thank you for the statistics that you included in here. As always, I'm a numbers guy. I love to see those. And I guess just a couple of observations is that our town population seems to stay fairly static. I'm curious now when I look at it and look at statistics like birth, marriage, death, are we staying kind of like the same age, or are we getting younger or older? That would also be kind of an interesting insight. Our population numbers don't really dramatically go up or down, except for the dogs. The dogs keep going up, which is interesting. But
Everybody got a dog.
we have more marriages than we did in the previous few years, and actually fewer deaths. So those are always encouraging.
Right. So all that's interesting. You would think that there would be less marriages because, you know, a lot of people weren't getting married due to restrictions and get-togethers and all that stuff. But yeah.
So the numbers are always interesting. So thank you for providing those. I had no specific questions on your budget.
Okay, Mr. Christian.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Lasser. You're muted.
Between Zoom and this one, it's hard to find the mute button. I have one question. You mentioned that we charge $15 for a listing of residents. Does that $15 cover it? And when was the last time that was changed?
So the $15 just covers the cost of the book, and it hasn't changed since I've been clerk, which is since 2011.
And how many of these do we give out?
Well,
Sell?
we purchased 50 hard copies, and we also get an electronic copy, which I distribute to all of the departments in electronic copy. But some departments also want the hard copy. I know building likes to have a hard copy for people out on the road. Dispatch also likes to have hard copies. The library archives a copy. So, yeah.
No, I'm just thinking the average Joe up the street who goes in and buys one.
Yeah, those are the ones that are increasing in demand. So we actually ran out last year, which is why I am going to purchase a few more. When we run out, I offer the electronic copy, but like I said, strangely enough, we've had an increase in people that want the physical copy of the book. So the physical copy is not updated at all. It's from January of the previous year, so the data is not current.
It's stale by the time they get it.
By the time they get it, yeah. But I don't, you know, so you probably know I can send out a list of current residents at any given time. I pull it from our state system, which, you know, that's as current of a list that you're going to get. But yeah, I don't know. That's a thing.
I'm just wondering, since, I mean, we haven't raised the price of it in so long, might there be an opportunity there?
I mean, we could definitely discuss that.
I don't know how other members feel, but You said it's been at least 10 years, Denise?
Yeah.
Yes,
And you said it was covering the cost, right?
it's just covering the cost. We don't
Yeah.
use it as a moneymaker.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably good. Till it hits the bestseller list, then we can bump
You never know. You never.
it up.
Strange what books make the bestseller list. Thanks.
Put it on Amazon. Mr. Russo.
Yeah, no, I have no questions. I appreciate your insights and walking us through it, Ms. Graffield. Thank you.
Mr. Cook, any questions?
Two, I guess. Staying with the residence list and the cost. Denise, do we do the same for the voters list?
So we don't charge for the voters list unless we provide it in a hard copy, and then I would be able to charge 5 cents a page. Nobody really wants the hard copy of the voter list. So normally I pull the extract from the state system and forward it over. I convert it into an Excel document and forward it to any requester. And so with the public records law changing, we're not able to charge for electronic copies of files that don't take longer than 2 hours to create, and really takes like 5 minutes to create. So those are all complimentary.
So there's no charge for that.
No charge for that, and that's in accordance with the public records laws.
Okay. My last question is, I see this sick leave buyback. Added to the budget.
The sick leave buyback, one of my staff members is going to be retiring in the next fiscal year. So is that what that is? No.
No, is that the annual buyback, Denise, of 5 days?
Oh, yes, that's the
That's something in the personnel bylaw, Tom, had something in it that had a section in it that employees as an incentive could buy back up to 5 days a year. And I believe that's what that is.
sick time, right? So once you reach a certain amount of sick time, then you're allowed to buy back up to 5 days if you don't use it.
The threshold, I believe, was 165.
When did that get authorized?
It's been in there for a while.
I didn't see it in last year's budget. So if I look at 21, I didn't see it.
No, it wasn't in the town clerks. No one was eligible last year. It's been in the building department budget in the past. It's been in other department budgets, but it's been in the personnel bylaw for 5 or 6 years.
Okay, so that's annual every year.
It's annual, yeah. That's something they can do every year if they meet the threshold.
So why isn't it in the salary budget up on line 1?
Let me just go to it. We show it as a separate line.
Yeah, I know, but why isn't it included in the salary budget?
Well,
Yeah.
it gets added into it. It's just more transparent, I think, if you add it as its own.
Yeah, we just want to show it separately. That's how it's tracked in Munis. That's how we track it within all our budgets, just so you can see it's separated as a cost.
Can I add to this? This is Steve. I just wanted to point out that also you can convert that sick time to vacation time. And so we don't usually show vacation time in, the salary lines. So that you don't know until the employee elects to take either it as vacation time or as the cash out for 5 work days. So I think that's one of the reasons why we kind of keep it separate is just in case we need that money during that fiscal year for that employee that has opted for the 5 days of pay.
And when do you qualify for that, Steve?
It's per fiscal year. So you can't elect to take it until after the beginning of the fiscal year. And I think we have something in there that you need to notify your department head by October, November, I think, that you're taking that time.
In all my years, I don't remember ever adopting that in the personnel rule bylaw.
You know,
Yeah, it was 2016, Tom.
By town meeting or by just
town meeting.
Town meeting.
article
Yeah.
in 2016 annual?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. I'll pull it out and send it to you.
Please do. Because that's it just raised a question because I went looking for it. I couldn't find it. But thank you, Richard, for sending that.
Yep, I'll send it to you.
Does anybody else get a benefit like that?
Yep, the unions do.
The budget.
All the unions.
Some of the AFSCME union gets that benefit, and I don't believe the police and fire that benefit got taken away when they converted to percentage longevity.
Yeah, but I don't see it in other budgets with the ones that were submitted this year.
Yeah, you'll see it in. What I'll do is I'll go through the budgets and send a list to the committee.
Thank you.
That's probably the easiest to do for me.
Probably. Yeah. It's just,
Yeah,
it's
I'll do that for you.
It's confusing because when you look at salaries and you track salaries and then you hit a line item like that, you try to do the math and it's nothing, I look at the formula and I see it wasn't in the formula either until it hits the bottom line.
Yep. Yeah, it's just the way we track the breakdown of salaries. It really isn't considered part of the annual regular salary for an individual. We want people to see what that is separate from all the other benefits. So
one last question. Can you carry it over, Richard, from one year to the next?
No, it's an annual.
It's an annual. It's not
Annual, yeah. So every year you'd have to elect to do it if you meet the threshold.
Okay, so when you can't carry it over from June 30th into July 1st.
No, you need to make the decision and it needs to be paid out in the fiscal year you make the decision.
Okay,
It's
thank
use
you.
it or lose it.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
That's the way it should work. But thank you, Richard.
You're welcome. I'll send out the background this week.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions on this one in addition, so which one do you want to move on to next, Denise?
So I also do parking and registrars. Those are pretty straightforward. Maybe we should jump into those next. And then elections is really the one that changes the most.
This is registrars.
Okay, so registrars is just a level funded budget. The only line items are salaries. So that's stipends for the registrars, office supplies, and staff development. Both level funded.
Okay, anybody have any questions on this one? Looks pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go to parking.
So parking also level funded. $4,000 is the only salary that's for the parking clerk stipend and professional services, which is we use Kelly and Ryan to interface with the RMV so that any parking tickets that aren't paid get marked at the registry so that it encourages violators to pay their ticket, or else they'll be getting they won't be able to register or relicense.
Okay, anybody have any questions on this one?
Just one on my end, just more for knowledge. Is that 1,200? Is that fees that we paid to the RMV, or is that fees that we pay for internal resources to go and deal with them?
Right. So we pay a vendor, Kelly and Ryan, and
Okay.
they have a direct interface with the RMV. So they would be able to mark a ticket after, if it doesn't get paid within the 21-day period, or we can also release the mark once it gets paid through them. Otherwise, we don't have a direct interface with the RMV, so we wouldn't be able to, provide incentive for payment.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Any others? Okay, want to do elections and town meetings?
All right, sounds good. So elections and town meetings was a challenging budget to create. So there are a few elections that are going to be coming up in fiscal year 23. Let me just pull up. All right, so in fiscal year 23, we have our annual, so it would start off with the state primary, and then we have the October special town meeting, and then we have the state election in 2020, and then the following 2023 annual town election and annual town meetings. So there's an increase in the amount of elections that we're going to be holding, which increases salaries as well as pretty much every line item under elections. And the other big question mark when it comes to elections is we don't know, how much early voting we're going to be having. The election laws are changing on a regular basis. Vote by mail is another question mark. We don't know to which capacity that's going to be. We also recently were re-precincted to add another sub-precinct, unfortunately, with state elections. So that's going to increase costs for staffing as well as tabulators. And what other increases will that cause? I think that's about it. So that's elections. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'll open it up. Any questions from the committee?
Denise, the increased cost with that re-precincting in the other tab, you say it'll require 3 additional staff members,
Yes.
and that seems to be driving a lot of the costs up, right?
Well, right. So the way that I think it's going to work, and I don't know because I've not had to deal with this, is that so we're going to need, at least a check-in staff and at least a teller at the end of the night because those, in that precinct, it's precinct 5. In that precinct, we're going to be tallying out 2 state rep elections. So we have precinct 1 has a different state rep than the other 2. And so when it comes to state elections, there was no way for us to re-precinct without causing this sub-precinct in 5A because when you're looking at those numbers, you can't go over 4,000 residents in any given precinct. And so it kind of pushed us into that. We were able to minimize it to just that one sub-precinct there. And, obviously it's a different ballot. So you need a different tabulator to count those ballots.
No, that makes sense, unfortunately. The other question that I had was on the postage. So the postage hasn't been listed as a budgetary item before, and now it's $20,000 for mailing ballots. We must have done some of that before and absorbed it under another line item, I'm assuming.
Yes. Rich, maybe you.
Yeah, I can go into that. So under the human resources budget, we carry postage, and any postage for the departments gets paid out of that account.
Gotcha.
We increased it last year or the year before that when we were going through the presidential election. And when we're doing the budget this year, I just felt that it really doesn't give you a good indication of what elections are costing us or going to cost us, especially with this new initiative. So I kept the postage in the human resources budget strictly for the normal everyday mailings that we have. And I broke out the postage for the elections and added a new line item here. This way it's easier to track and understand the costs.
No, that's great. It's very visible. It just looked like though that it came out of the blue because it just popped up, but that makes complete sense, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, and does that include the mailing of the warrants and that sort of thing? Or just
No,
elections,
that's
just
under,
elections?
that's
This is
that's
just
different.
elections,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it
Yeah,
does say
so-
town meetings at top, so I was wondering.
Yeah,
for
no,
the-
that's a separate one.
For the presidential election, we mailed out over 10,000 ballots, and you know, obviously that was a significant cost. We were able to get you know, some funding back on that. You know, we entered it in as you know, a COVID expense, as well as I certified that as in the funds for the state. I certify how much we spend on that for the state. So we also got some reimbursement for that as well.
Okay,
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
all right, Mr. Lavassier?
Yes, Denise, kudos to you and your team for dealing with the slicing and dicing with Ginsu knives that the state did to us with the redistricting. Do we need an additional voting machine?
To count, yeah, for that sub precinct.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, so yes, I think. Like I said, I have not experienced this, so I am working with our vendor that services and maintains our voting machines to see if there's a way to program the cards for that precinct without having to use two separate tabulators. And I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there's a way that we could ask the state if they could fund the additional machine since they slice and dice us.
Yeah, like I said, that's kind of a lot of this elections budget is really a big question mark. So we're budgeting, you know, this far ahead before knowing exactly what some of the laws are going to be looking like. I know that there's going to be a vote, I think on Thursday on the House side for the voting rights bill. And so we'll know a little bit more after that. It'll probably end up going to a conference committee and then we'll find out. But unfortunately, sometimes the election laws change right before the election. So we're left to, you know, understand them and manage them and, you know, run an election soon after we get the news that these laws change. So this is the best that I can do and anticipate. Hopefully, you know, we don't do that same level of vote by mail for the next presidential election. I think some of it had to do with the, you know, holding election during a pandemic. But it's still, you know, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I if we could just keep in touch with our state delegation and see if they could figure out how to get us something to offset some of these costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I communicate with them on a regular basis when it comes to, you know, election related and re-precincting. And so I'm in the process of putting together a letter to send to our House delegates before the vote on Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, any questions?
Just one, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, these on the overtime rate, that includes the police details for our precincts, correct?
It does not.
Okay.
Overtime rate would include my office staff, any overtime they work during an election or early voting, as well as maintenance staff.
Okay.
And so a lot of times with early voting, I think there were 14 days of early voting before the presidential election, and I think 10 before the primary. So my staff has to a lot of those times work extra hours. Also, weekends are included now in the early voting, and so it just really increases the amount of time that election staff have to come into work, as well as my office staff. And so, when it is the office staff, it's in addition to their regular hourly mandated time to work.
I apologize. I forgot all about those 10 days. I'm in a COVID vortex here. Time runs together. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Russo?
The only question I had, and is I think, Richard, you had mentioned about the postage being in the HR budget previously, and I know, obviously there was a lot of, early in voting, mail-in voting, absent, whatnot previously. Again, I think really driven by the pandemic, the majority of the increase anyway. So how does this compare? Because when I look at the HR budget from FY21, it was roughly almost double that, but it could be postage for other things other than just simply elections as well, I would imagine. So how does this compare to that?
So we really don't have a track record in this area to say this is what we spent over the last few years. The past presidential election, we did put, I think, $20,000 into the postage budget. And I'm not sure if we spent it all at that time, but it wasn't that far off. So when we put the budget together this year, it truly was just a budget number with really no history to back us up. So it could be too much, and we'll adjust next year. Or frankly, it could not be enough.
Okay. No, I appreciate the transparency. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Cook, any questions?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and I don't have any further questions either. Did that cover all of yours, Denise, or did I forget one?
Yep, that's it. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Denise.
All right.
COA budget?
Which one?
COA.
COA. All right. Sounds good.
Good evening, everyone.
There we go.
Our salaries have increased a little bit based on the fact that I hired a licensed clinical social worker for the outreach position. She's a master's level social worker, so she merited more money than the previous outreach worker. And as a result, she's able to supervise a BC intern, which we were able to secure this year. So we actually have 2 outreach workers in our department working for us. The BC student is part-time. And then we have longevity for the activities coordinator and myself. So that is really the increase in the salary budget. The other line items are pretty level funded. The professional services area went up a little bit, but we have a database that we use for statistical information, and that generally goes up in price every year, an annual licensing agreement that we have to pay. So I figured in a little extra for that, and also staff development. I increased to pay for the social worker's license when she has to redo it. Other than that, it's pretty level funded.
Rob, just one thing. Jan and I spoke today, and it looks like Jan's salary for the director needs to be increased. We didn't add the step increase that she's going to have next year. So before the budgets are finalized, that will need to be adjusted, but I'll do that as we go through the process.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Jan, for walking us through that.
Sure.
I'll go around again. Mr. Asavorian?
Yes, well, I would like to thank you for all the numbers that you provided. I love to dig into numbers. And if I'm interpreting them correctly, it looks like we're not at pre-pandemic numbers of services being delivered yet, but you seem to be trending in that right direction if I read the numbers correctly.
Yeah, so I didn't have an outreach worker from June of the previous year until March of 2021. So any outreach services that we provided were really provided by myself, as well as, you know, running the senior center and, you know, trying to provide virtual programming. So our numbers did dip as far as that went. And the only thing I can say is because we didn't really have a dedicated outreach worker for all of that time.
And just one question on the senior center participation number. Is that number of visits?
Yes.
I guessed that, but I just wanted to confirm.
Yes, it is.
But thank you. That's all the questions I had. Again, thank you for the numbers you provided.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Christian, any questions on this one?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Lavassier?
On the transportation side, we were way down due to the pandemic, I'm sure. Are we? It looked like we're going in the right direction here too, right?
Yes. So
Pick up a little bit.
we weren't providing transportation for more than one individual for almost 7 months of the beginning of last year. So these numbers are from January to December. So we didn't open the senior center until July, and we were using the LRTA's protocol as far as how many people could ride on the van at any one time. And so the rides did decrease for the beginning of the year, but they have upticked from July to December. And, you know, presently we are providing more rides and more services.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Russo?
No questions. I just would just say, Jan, I appreciate the efforts, insight, and analysis. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Cook?
No question, just a comment. I'd like to thank the director for the effort she's put in during the pandemic, especially for the elderly people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I hit everybody. And I have no further questions either. So thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you.
Move on to the library.
Library time. Welcome, Diane. Let me find that one.
Thank you. Now I know how all the other departments felt while they waited for me to go first.
It's fun, isn't it?
Well, I learned a lot. So yeah, I'm kind of happy Richard did it that way. Thanks. Okay, well, thank you so much for having this meeting and chatting about the library's budget. I have to do my glasses on and off. I'm sorry. So our personnel budget has increased based on just normal increases. There's no, we don't really have any new expensive staff members. We haven't really lost any expensive staff members, that kind of thing. So, so that has stayed roughly stable. It's about $11,000 in contractual increases. A couple people now get longevity and, you know, so things like that. Let's see. Energy and utilities, I'm keeping the same. We have been open since early FY21. I think we have a somewhat realistic idea of what the budget's going to cost, what the utilities will cost. And repairs and maintenance again, that went down a little bit, but that's just relatively stable. Network membership stayed the same again. We have been informed that it will go up next year, which I'm happy about because I believe they've been keeping this cost artificially low, which I appreciate and I know the town appreciates, but I'm not looking forward to a large increase. So we'll see what happens. Communications has gone up by about 1,000. And that has, more to do with internet access and, having to get more hotspots and, during this pandemic, because we've been, having to meet virtually. And so we've had some need for hotspots around the building. So that's that increase. Office supplies stayed the same. There's an increase in technology, which is, basically, let me get to it because that will be easier to explain. Technology. So there's a new piece of software that we're paying for, and a service, and it's our scanning, printing, service for patrons. So, and that's TBS and scanner. That's that cost. And it has provided better copying and scanning and faxing service than we were able to provide before. So we're pleased with that. Patrons are pleased with that. And the only other item in there that we are using is called Know Before, and it's basically a cybersecurity training software that we are able to purchase we're hoping to purchase for next year. So that is that. I'm sorry, I have to get back to my budget. Come on. Okay. Materials again is just based on 13% of all the other operating costs. And I think everything else has basically stayed the same. Yeah, that's stayed the same. So we're doing it's a increased budget, mostly personnel and technology.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Asomorian, any questions?
No specific questions on the budget. As Diane went through, she answered the two small questions that I had. I'm more curious now. How are we trending? Obviously, we're not out of the pandemic, but based on the numbers that you've provided, like books borrowed and things like that, do we seem to be getting back trending towards pre-pandemic numbers, or are we still in kind of a malaise?
Well, we're trending upward, not as quickly as, of course, everyone would like, but I'll send along to Richard, but I just finished this afternoon. I did a comparison of key services between July and December of 21 and July and December of 22, which are the two dates that I have. And circulation has gone up, 3 times what it was last year for those 6 months period. Library visits has gone from 8,000 in that 6-month period, with the understanding that we were closed for 3 of those 6 months. Right. So if I were to guess, I would say, let's plan on 16,000 for the 6-month period, 16,000 visits. And this year so far, we've had 36,000 visits. So people are coming back to the library. Online searching has gone up again. Programming has stayed relatively stable because we were able to move to a virtual environment. But that virtual environment was difficult for teen and children's services. So we have seen somewhat of an increase, and I'm hoping in May, maybe, to restore in-person programming for all ages. But I'm done trying to predict what's happening with the pandemic. That's been hard. But it will also allow us to have more in-person programs outside. So that will affect children's especially, and some of our adult programs as well. So we're trending up, but it's still quiet. It's quiet. Yeah, it's sad. I miss
And your budget is maintaining all applicable certifications, right?
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Christian?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Lavasier?
No questions, Diane. Just a thank you for all the data that you threw together. Those were interesting numbers to look at.
Yeah, they're interesting, but sad for me because they're not anything like what we had been doing in the past. So, but it's a casualty of the pandemic. So
we'll get back there.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Russo?
No questions at this time. I appreciate the efforts. I think this is, hopefully next year, this time we're heading in the right direction, right? We're getting back to that. So I appreciate the efforts. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Cook?
I have none at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and I don't have any additional either. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Let's see. Now we'll get to some real exciting budgets.
We'll do the moderator first for excitement.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. What am I doing? Where are we? There it is. Doesn't change much.
As you can see, it's a small budget. Includes the salary of the moderator and any travel to conferences and dues and memberships to the State Moderator Association.
We saving money right now because we have no moderator.
Yeah, we haven't spent money in a while, as you can see.
Don't spend it all in one place, though.
I know, and it's not much of a salary, and there have been years we forget to pay the moderator. Denise has to call me and remind me.
No wonder we can't keep one. All right, anybody have any questions on this one?
No questions, Mr. Moderator.
All right.
You might want a new job.
Yeah.
Do the Finance Committee one, I guess.
Sure. Finance Committee is good.
Let's
Another easy one.
That group deserves a raise.
That comes up every year.
We got to get it till May, you know.
Again, no changes to this budget. The biggest part of the budget's obviously the reserve fund stays the same. You never really spend any funds on office supplies or staff developments. We do pay for the dues and memberships to the state town association of finance committees. In the past, we paid for the clerk to do the minutes. Right now, we're paying that out of the selectmen's budget. We have someone that does the minutes for the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Still a fair amount of minutes that need to be caught up on, but she's working her way through.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this one?
I was just a question relative to our budget.
Yep.
Where does our mail go to now, Richard?
Sometimes it comes to our office. There's down in one of the conference rooms, there's a mailbox for different committees and commissions that we leave it in, and the chairmans will come by when they're in town hall to pick it up. When you get back to meeting in person, when we see Rob, we'll usually give him the mail. Or if there's enough if there's mail to all the members, we'll give it out then.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
No questions on my end. No.
All right. Okay, where does that leave us? Town council, maybe?
Town council, yep.
Yeah, I get so many spreadsheets open. There it is. Town council. That's the standard allotment that we put there.
Yes, that pays for town council and any special town council that we hire. Feely and Brown are town council for Tewksbury, and as you can see, it just fluctuates depending on how busy the year is.
Yep. Any questions on this one?
I anticipate this budget will probably spend a little bit more than the previous year based on needing some special town council help if that 40B comes in on 300 Ames Pond.
Okay.
I think this budget will be able to handle it.
Okay. I don't see any questions. Okay. Is that the end of the list for tonight?
That's the end of the list for tonight. There are no transfers. We do have transfers, but I didn't send them out yet. I'll send them out this week to be acted upon next week.
Okay, sounds good. Any updates on fire station when they're moving in?
Right now, they're probably 2 weeks away from substantial completion, maybe sooner. But they're moving along. It was delayed based on just delay in supply chain issues and manpower. So, but it's back on track and within budget, and we should be hopefully in there in the substantial completion in the next couple of weeks. We are doing a tour on Wednesday morning. If anyone's interested, just let me know so I can make sure there's so I just have the OPM prepared for the people that are touring, but we're touring at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning.
8
I'm wondering
a.m.
if I have on
open.
Wednesday, so can I do a different day?
Just give me a call if anybody wants to do a different day and we'll take it through.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Guess we can move on. You don't have anything else at the moment, Richard?
No, everything else is going well. There's no financially, everything is sound, no major issues. Like I said, we'll have transfers next week. Nothing. The only real budget I'm waiting for a final number on is Shawsheen Tech, and usually I have a meeting with the administration at Shawsheen Tech sometime at the end of January, beginning of February, and I'll let the committee know what I find out.
Okay. Unless there's any questions for Richard, I'll move on to the committee member reports. Tom, do you have anything for the elementary school building?
I have a couple of questions through
Okay.
you, through the chair to Richard. As usual, you know, I start my budget work as Richard starts his in November with that budget message that goes out, Mr. Chair. Couple of questions. I went looking as I pulled paperwork together to do reconciliation and so forth. I don't remember receiving a fourth quarter report for fiscal year 21, 22.
Okay, I know one was sent out, but I'll go back, Tom, and resend it.
Yeah, the fourth quarter I don't have on my emails. I checked all your emails received, Richard. I couldn't find it. The other thing is the turnback money that came back from each department. We usually get a list of that. At least when I check my files, I haven't seen one for this year yet. For turnback money, which generated the free cash.
Yep, I'll send that. I'll send an end of year budget out also, which shows what each budget had for surplus that was turned back.
Yeah, I've been trying to reconcile what was expended, and I see it in the budget sheets, you know, in the Excel sheets.
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see it. I can't reconcile it with the paperwork that the finance committee usually receives.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it was sent out. I'll go back and resend everything.
Okay, that's the fourth quarter reports.
Yep.
I know there was a change in the finance office with the retirement or turnover with Mr. Rigo.
Yep.
So it might have been right around that time, Richard. The other thing I noticed in the budget message, and I won't bring it up tonight with any of the departments because they haven't discussed their utilities other than the library. That's 78,000 for utilities, gas and electric. I noticed in your budget message, Richard, that you asked the department heads to carry a little over 8 cents per kilowatt hour for their electric use. Is that a realistic number?
During the pandemic, when things seemed to, there was a projection for gas and electric rates. I locked the town's electric supply rate and their natural gas rate for town buildings in at that time for 5 years. So that's a solid number for our supply rate, and it was locked in.
You know that's 2 cents lower than the residential.
I do.
From Constellation.
Yep, I do.
Okay. No complaints?
No, we locked it. And again, when we were looking at the market at the time, and we looked out 3, 4, 5 years, the numbers were good. And I took a chance and just locked the, again, it's not the other ancillary charges that National Grid will charge us over time, but just for the electric supply and the gas supply, those numbers are locked in for 5 years.
Did we lose Tom?
Hello?
Nope.
I think we lost.
And just based on everything and based on everything I read and reviewed with consultants, it was a good decision, a good number at the time, and I think we're seeing that through with the numbers that we're seeing currently for supply rates.
Okay. And the same also applies to the therm for gas?
Correct.
Okay, and that's locked in too?
That's locked in too, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep. Again, National Grid will have other charges for transmission and transportation of the supply, but the supply rate is locked in.
Okay. Thank you. The Green Committee, Mr. Chairman, we were scheduled to have a meeting on January 6th, but that meeting wasn't held because of the loss of the planning director. And I'm not sure if the new planning director is up to date on the Green Committee application, or if we'll be having a meeting in the near future.
Okay.
The Elementary School Building Committee, I haven't been attending the meetings because of COVID and the number of people that attend those meetings. I've been monitoring it from home, both the correspondence and so forth. The Elementary School Building Committee is still on schedule. We're into our 13th change order. Richard may want to add if I'm missing anything, but the owner's project managers reports are available on site and on the website. For anybody that wants it, I'll send them out to them. But the project is on schedule.
Okay.
Correct. Tom's correct on that. There's no major issues budgetarily and schedule-wise for construction. It's going well.
Okay. When is that again scheduled to be done?
The October to November timeframe next on 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're not moving in
Till January.
All right.
until correct, Richard?
So after the holiday break.
Correct.
Yeah.
After the Christmas.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks for that, Tom and Richard.
You're welcome.
Do we have anything from Economic Development Committee?
Negative, as
What
well
about
as
the bylaw
bylaw
committee?
committee. I'll reach back out to you offline.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to go back to the Green Committee.
Sure.
The governor, the administration, and National Grid is on a solar project push. It's kind of been lagging. So I think in the very near future, I think the Green Committee should start looking at solar for some of the town buildings. And to take advantage of this money that's coming in from the state. They're gonna open up some money for solar for municipals.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
And we have, I believe we have 3 new projects of recent that is capable of taking solar on their roof structure in the structural environment.
So, Mr. Chairman, just quickly on that, Dave, Libby, and I are working with the company to possibly provide solar at the high school and possibly at the Ryan. We're going to wait till the new elementary school construction is either complete or further along. We do take advantage of net metering that we purchase from other communities that help offset our energy costs at certain buildings. So even though we don't have solar panels physically at our buildings, we do take advantage of solar from solar farms throughout the Commonwealth. So, how much capacity we have left for solar, we'd have to do a review of that, but we are looking into it.
All right, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, anything else on the committee member reports? All right. Let's see. So the next thing is payment of recording secretary timesheet, which we don't have. Approval of meeting minutes, which we don't have. Hopefully we'll make some progress on that. Hopefully
So all the meetings you've had that are on WebEx, the current recording secretary is catching up on. She's also catching up on selectmen minutes, but there are still minutes that Melissa had that she didn't complete that we just need to figure out how to get those done, that are handwritten notes. So we have some work to do.
okay. I know we had approved a bunch, I don't know, a few months back.
You'll probably get a bunch again, just waiting to find out.
Okay.
Rob, you and I might need to sit down and put some minutes together.
Wait. Try to go back to my notes.
To recreate meetings from the notes that we have.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else? Otherwise,
Motion
thank you,
to
everybody.
adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Dave?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Jason with a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Asnavorian?
Aye.
Mr. Christian?
Aye.
Mr. Lavoisier?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good
See you
evening.
next week.